it's a little too soon to call it a year, but roughly last summer, I started going into this opposition between Neptune and Pisces, which is obviously going to be there for a long time, and Jupiter and Virgo, and how there's going to be this cognitive dissonance and almost like having schizophrenic, like psychosis episodes where people won't really be able to tell the line of reality from fantasy or some of their imagination. So I said that this will be the first time, instead of when you look at a painting and you define the painting by the subject, say it's a painting of a person, you define that painting by the person that is that subject. That you will then have to actually define the painting instead, not by the subject, but by the negative space or the subjective area around it. So that's what's been going on in politics lately, and with specifically the United States political party systems. There's a lot of dirt being thrown around about the Democrats. And it's not dirt, there's a lot of truth being dug up because they're trying to substantially change things yet again, because it's time for our revolution, our Pluto Revolution. And so, in a way, the Democratic Party or the liberal progressives have now possessed or manifested or evolved into what would have been a Great Britain back during the first American Revolutionary War. So when Nostradamus says that Obama will be the last president of the United States, some people were thinking it's going to be natural disasters, which are continuing to happen, but it's not going to wipe out the entire country. It's going to be a shift in the political system. I've theorized that it's going to be like a great, like the Berlin Wall, because if we're mirroring themes through the 60s, then the Berlin Wall, the divide, is going to happen in some way, shape, or form yet again. And that happened essentially with, communism and free market. I think that it'll manifest possibly like that, or it'll manifest as the conclaves of the Islamization of all the countries, making a wall. But the wall won't last very long if that's the reason why the wall's put up in the first place. Because the Muslims don't want that wall up. Only the other people on the other side want that wall up. And seeing as the Islamization is assimilating with the Liberal Party, which is the party that wants to take away firearms, they're going to do their talkie and play nice. And then they're going to just basically consume and force all the liberal followers that stuck up for them to conform or die. And so that's going to cut a massive amount of American lives. And that's originally what I predicted last summer too, that there was going to be a great flood that will eat half of the East Coast. So and even other astrologers and psychics have also mentioned something similar. And flood is obviously symbolic. It could be some sort of flooding, but with the polar ice cap in the Arctic actually getting bigger, I don't necessarily think it's going to be physical flooding because the ocean level is rising, or it could be a tsunami, but that would be a massive, massive tsunami. But the metaphysical flood, like with the flood of the plague coming through Europe, which was also associated with Muslims, that is going to be likely what I'm assuming. And if you look at a map from all the refugee placements, there's massive amounts of them in the East Coast into the Kansas area, that sort of thing, whatever you call that. I think they call it the Midwest, but I don't think it's Midwest. I've lived on the West Coast my whole life, so. So if that's essentially where the wall gets put up, then that, the great flood that would annihilate half of the country, that would constitute as that half that I was concerned about. And then also the Cascadia Fault, and also the radiation that's going on because of Fukushima in Japan. Yeah. Gizzy, please, shut up. Fucking cat. But it's basically poisoning all the sea life. Not just in the Pacific Ocean, I'm sure it'll spread now. And so anybody who is dependent on seafood, which I would assume Hawaii, Japan, parts of Alaska, all the West Coast that's too stupid to pay attention to what's going on with that, they're all going to get stomach cancer. And if that doesn't kill them first, then the Cascadia Fault will eventually go off. And it will either break off a big piece of the American continent, or it will set off any major huge volcanoes within a decent amount of radius from that. So like Yellowstone, Rainier. I honestly am not very thorough with wherever other volcanoes are. I know there's more, I'm sure, but I would assume that they would go off. And if Yellowstone goes off, depending on the trajectory of the ash and everything with the wind, it could completely blanket and black out the sun for at least everything south. And if not, start going into like Nevada. And I mean, we won't even discuss California. California's water's toxic. They're gonna fall off the ocean when the Cascadia Fault happens anyway. So, wow, I love how this just totally spun into gloom and doom, but I was specifically trying to talk about Neptune opposition Jupiter. So the cognitive dissonance. People are starting to realize and have different perspectives of the Republican Party. Like, I can't even believe that there is a university, Illinois University, that tries to insinuate that Abraham Lincoln was a Democrat. Like, that, I can't even. Like, if you know anything about the Gettysburg Address, I mean, I don't know. When I was in grade school, we did that stupid where we had to memorize every single president and like the capital of every state and state in alphabetical order. And even though I don't necessarily remember all that, I remember enough of it to at least know that Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. And yeah, it never dawned on me Democrat kind of thing. I just thought that they were two different kind of entities that existed at some point, shape, or form, but that makes total sense. And, well, I mean, besides that, the Democrats are the ones that wanted slavery, and it's also the Democrats that continue to push, bigger government, which is the prison state. So, and the black community always gets upset because they say white privilege because white people don't get picked on as much. I'm like, instead of being mad at the person that's standing next to you on the street that's a citizen, you need to be mad at the establishment that is locking you up. It's not us pointing the finger at you and saying lock them up. They've been wanting to keep you chained for a long time. They just found a sneaker way to do it. So, I don't even know where the hell I was going with this. Oh, yeah. So, Nostradamus was talking about how Obama will be the last president. I think it's because there's a good majority that have switched completely over to Republican. I think at some point, the Democratic or the progressive liberals will eat themselves alive, which they already are, or they'll be annihilated by the Muslims to the point where there will no longer be that second party. Therefore, there will no longer be a democracy per se. It would be more of a republic, even though, by definition, people would start nitpicking with that. But you know what I mean? There would be the same kind of country, but there would no longer be that option. And with Pluto retrograde right now, Saturn retrograde right now, especially us going through our Pluto Revolution, and once it hits September, October, Jupiter's going to go into Libra. It's going to try to balance everything out for the greater good. And I think that's when people are going to start coming to a realization. And whether people like it or not, Trump's progression chart, his true node is supposed to be activated this year, meaning that he's supposed to ascend to a higher purpose of a new responsibility. And I looked around at the election day, and I can't remember if it was the exact time or whatever, but all I remember is that Gemini was like the MC. And it had some, obviously I'm Miss Negative Nancy, so if I usually see something negative, I'll say it right away, regardless of my bias. All I remember, I'd have to look back again, is that I translated it as to Trump is going to win the election, which would solidify everybody transitioning from Democrats to Republican. So thank you for the cognitive dissonance, I guess. Neptune and Jupiter. It's been real. It's been crazy. I would say it's not been real. That's definitely the problem. There's been reality has gone MIA.